Living from our heart, living from our core, living from our power, we all get more. We are powerful women.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Heart Whispers Summit. I'm Sue Erda. I am your host for this event, and if you've been listening in to the summit, you've heard these incredible, amazing women who are the 20 authors from the upcoming book, Heart Whispers, where they share their personal stories of transformation and how they learn to listen to their heart, tap in, listen to their intuition, and follow that guidance to create a life they love that is filled with ease. And I know that's partly why you're here listening. You want to do that for yourself as well. And so these authors are going to help you. You're going to get to meet them. And I love talking to them, by the way. This is really fun for me. So I hope you enjoy them too. I know you will. Today, we're talking with Dr. Sabrina Franconeri. And I'm going to read a brief introduction, and then we'll get started talking with her. Dr. Sabrina Franconeri is a learning and development professional with a passion for inspiring people through learning journeys. Dr. Franconeri has spent more than 20 years teaching the importance of understanding communication styles. Born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Dr. Franconeri spent much of her life in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, earning her doctorate of science in communications at Robert Morris University. She has lived in Washington, D.C., and currently lives and works in the New York City area. She attributes her love of learning to her parents. Sabrina loves to travel and loves calling Hawaii her chosen home away from home. And Sabrina, I am happy to talk with you today. How are you?
I'm very well, Sue. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yeah, this is great. I love it. And, Sabrina, I'll start by saying I read your story in the book that you have shared, and it's beautiful. I'm so grateful that you shared. I know our listeners will love that too. And I like your title today because all of these things are meaningful to me. Beautiful sunrise, beautiful life. Give yourself permission to achieve greatness. I love that. Let's start off by telling the audience a little bit about you and your personal journey and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. So it's definitely an interesting journey. And if you read the story, you'll be able to dive in a bit more just around my background. But I went to school thinking that I was going to be an educator. I initially went in with the intention of I was going to become a college professor and just live happily ever after. And I'm not quite sure what that looked like when I was in my early 20s. But obviously, as I started teaching school, and I started in the primary school system, so I taught 7th grade and 9th grade English, which was very eye-opener for certain, being in a middle school in the early 2000s. But as I started doing it, I had essentially the realization that I really wanted to do more with that educational training and background. And as you dive into my story, my personal circumstances sort of changed for me. I got married young, thought that that was the right move to do. And then essentially, obviously, things change, even though you plan for them. And I had to really make a decision about what my career was going to look like. So what I did was I made a complete shift and took the educational background, essentially, and went into learning for professional services. So I really started working in the very early days of whenever they had corporate training in law firms to develop content. I taught courses to secretaries and paralegals and essentially just moved up into the ranks. And from there, I was really allowed to build a career in learning that not only allowed me to create content, study communication styles, but also to teach at the same time. So it was sort of the best of every world. And during that time, I'm not quite sure how I did it, but I was able to earn my second graduate degree and my doctorate while I was working full time. Again, do not ask me how I was able to do it and pull it off, but I did. And that allowed me to sort of transition into other opportunities, including a stint in global management consulting, where I was able to teach all around the world.
Wow, that sounds great. I love that. So you traveled all around to different offices to teach?
Yeah, absolutely. I've taught in Singapore, I've taught in Dubai, I've taught obviously here in the US, all throughout Europe. So really had some wonderful experiences.
That sounds great. And everything has shifted lately because everybody's on Zoom, right? That's why I was wondering if you got to travel when you did the trainings.
Yes, all pre-pandemic. And then, of course, I returned to my old life very briefly, thanks to the power of the vaccines. And then I, essentially was able to transition into what I'm doing now.
Terrific. I love that. And so, I mentioned in the beginning, I love this title, Beautiful Sunrise, Beautiful Life, because I love beautiful sunrises. I live in Florida as well. And it's just, I love the beach and the sunrise. So what is the significance of that phrase, beautiful sunrise, beautiful life?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned in my bio, I love Hawaii. I sort of fell in love with Hawaii just very recently, in probably about 2021. I went there during a time for the first time when I was having definitely a bit of a struggle, a health struggle, emotional struggle, and just trying to figure out where I was going to fit in post-COVID. And that expression in the wake of COVID is, I think it's getting a bit of a cliche, but at the same time, it is very true. And there was just a lot going on in my personal life. So I just went out there to really reclaim my energy, reclaim my spirituality and my calmness. And Hawaiian sunrises are absolutely incredible. I am an early riser. So the first day I was there, I think I was up at 3 a.m. and, went out to the beach and saw the sunrise come up for the first time. And when you see all of the different colors, it really just puts things in perspective for you. You are just so grateful in that moment while, you have so much to work on in your life and on yourself, but knowing that within that moment, this is a beautiful sunrise. And regardless of what's going on, I have a beautiful life. So I took a picture of that sunrise with me in front of it, and I posted it to my Instagram page, and I said, beautiful sunrise, beautiful life. And the rest is history.
Wow, I love that. And I was in Hawaii once many years ago, and I agree with you. The sunrises are spectacular. Just there's nothing like it that I've seen anywhere else.
Absolutely. The sunsets are incredible too, but there's just something about that sunrise coming up over the Pacific Ocean that I don't think that anybody can replicate.
Yep, I'm with you on that. That's terrific. And so now, so things have shifted for you. Why do you have such a passion now helping women in the areas of self-esteem and anxiety?
Yeah, because I think it really, definitely ebbs and flows for all women. And for women, I think it's hard for us to admit whenever we're hurting or we're in trouble or we're not okay. And I had a moment like that a couple of years ago where I just simply was not okay. And I feel like women tend to really stick to this prescription life. And I thought that I had to do that as well by getting married early, buying a home, having a husband, and thinking about that where it didn't necessarily fulfill me. I wasn't happy for a variety of circumstances. And you can dive into all of that within my story because it was painful for me to talk about, but I'm really happy that I put it out there because I want other women to know that when you're in a situation like that is involving a bit of emotional abuse, you can transition. And I really want to make sure that women are on the right journey that's prescribed to them. If it is a marriage and children in a home, that's wonderful. And I really admire women who have chosen that path in life. But if it's not, there are other things out there and it's never too late to start over. So I definitely want to be an advocate and a resource for women who are involved in any type of abusive relationship that potentially could affect them long term.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about this just briefly. I know it wasn't something we planned on, but so you're talking about emotional abusive relationships. If somebody is in that right now, because somebody's listening and I know that they're in that, what is one critical piece of advice you would give to them?
You're not alone. You are not by yourself. There is definitely someone who is out there that has gone through that experience. And it's okay to admit that you need some help. And I was very fortunate to be able to have a supportive family where I was able to get out of that situation quite easily. But even if you're not, there are support groups that are out there. There are other women, such as myself, who are out there that can certainly help and provide guidance on how you did that. And emotional abuse is real. It's definitely something that I think people until very recently didn't take so seriously, but the scars are long-term. I mean, there are still certain times in my life where I'm questioning myself or I find myself getting upset. And I think about, you live in that relationship for so many years and it does affect you. The emotional scars sometimes tend to heal slower than the physical ones.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that. Let's talk about stress, career stress, personal stress. Everybody's got it, right? Everybody's just got different stress. So, something's affecting someone right now with stress. What can women do when they are feeling overwhelmed by the stress that's in their life?
Sure, absolutely. And that's really hard, as I said earlier, for people, especially women, to admit. And I think one of the things that we can really do is do something called self-reflection. So if something is off and it just does not feel right for whatever reason, I think as women, we have really good intuitions. And definitely, going with that old phrase, trust your gut. If something is feeling off with you, it probably is. Now, how you choose to self-diagnose that and how you choose to get help, I think there's a variety of different things that people can do. But I think the first step with stress is certainly being able to acknowledge that. But I would encourage people, if you're looking for help with stress, regardless of what it is, definitely seek resources. It took me a long time to admit that I needed something else. I needed some sort of additional resource than what I was giving to myself in order to essentially get better. And outside resources are great, whether it's a regular therapist, a yoga therapist, even like I remember thinking workplace assistance programs, employee assistance programs. During my struggle, I used my current employer's EAP, employee assistance program, quite frequently when I was figuring out what it was I was going to do. It was sort of right at the end of, the heart of COVID. And I talked about this in my story as well. I didn't necessarily talk to my family or many of my close friends about it because I was embarrassed, and having sort of an objective person be there to help you make decisions and connect the dots is critical. Also, too, there just definitely has been so much, I think, shame and humiliation on mental health strains and mental health struggles. And I think we as women have to sort of move past that and know that it is okay at times to not be okay. And whether a past relationship, as we talked about, has caused that, whether it's workplace bullying or things that have come up in our lives, we do feel things, and it is okay not to be okay. It's though our duty to be able to find a resource to help us be okay again. And I would hope that women friends of one another can really be a supportive network and help each other. And I'm just doing this to really put my voice out there and my name out there, that where I'm certainly open to be a resource in this space for anyone who's struggling.
Beautiful. I love that. You've lived a lot of life. We all have people on this phone. We've all lived a lot, or on this call, they've lived a lot of life. What roadblocks have you personally overcome that you would share with us?
Sure. I mean, I think definitely having to reinvent myself over and over again. I was writing my story, and my life has really been in little chapters and little nuggets, and I'm kind of curious to see what happens next. But in each segment, it feels like I do reinvent myself. But at the same time, I sort of ring true to my inner child. And I talk a lot about my inner child within the story. And in order to to get to understand my inner child, you will have to dive into the book and read that. But it is something that, while you're reinventing yourself, trying to find that inner child and that inner voice, because they're all in there. So that's definitely a roadblock, but I feel like I had a lot of help from that inner child. The other roadblock I think, I would like to talk a little bit about is, coming from childhood. Childhood bullying, it's real. And regardless of how severe people have experienced it, it does leave scars as well. And I think that's something that really created a bit of a sensitivity within me. And it caused me to start questioning everything that I did, which is how I got the title of my story, which is called Great Enough. I constantly asked myself, am I good enough to do this? Am I good enough to do that? Am I good enough to live in New York City like I do now? Am I good enough to lead a team? Am I good enough to stay in a marriage? It all just sort of resonates back to having a feeling of judgment when you're too young to handle that. It really can affect how you process and what you take advantage of your life and in your life, and what you miss out on in your life. And my regret is that pieces of my life, because I set such high expectations, I missed them. And I do regret that, but there is a lot of life left to live for certain. And I think the last thing, I will talk about, since we're focused more on women, is the process of getting a divorce. And I got a divorce when I was 27. Very hard decision to make, but it was the right decision for me personally. It does come with the financial stress. It does come with the mental anguish. It does come with a new set of insecurity, but there are people out there. There is life beyond that situation. There is a whole life ahead of you that you don't even know about. The story isn't finished. And that's something, if someone out there who is listening and contemplating a divorce, regardless of what age that you're at, there are options for you. This is not the end of the road. And I just want people to know that.
Yeah, good. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, what's the divorce rate these days? About 50%, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's getting, I think, better. You mentioned in my bio, I spent a lot of time growing up in Pittsburgh, and it's definitely a different place than New York City. And I wasn't going to share this either, Sue, but the other thing is I remember when I changed my name back from my married name to my maiden name, there was a big rigmarole, for lack of a better word, at my workplace about why my name changed, because I didn't tell anybody. And I remember just thinking, like, why is this such a big deal? But that was a reason why I had, essentially hid the divorce from a lot of people, because I didn't want to go through something like that. When you're in a space now, such as New York City, I feel like if that were to have happened now, maybe it wouldn't have gone down the way that it did. But that also left a mark where people were questioning who I was, my decision, and why did my name change? My name will
Yeah.
stay the same forever now, though. So
Yeah, very interesting. I also grew up around Pittsburgh, but that's where I was born, outside of Pittsburgh. And there's a lot of ethnicity, a lot of ethnic groups there. And I think that is part of that, the name thing anyway. So, yep.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, throughout your career, you've had lots of constructive feedback. We all do. We get good feedback that we appreciate and not so great feedback that we maybe don't appreciate because it might not be true. But tell us about constructive feedback. How has that fed your career?
Yeah, and I think you sort of hit the nail on the head. We all get feedback, and I feel like as the generations continue to get younger in the workplace, everybody wants feedback. And having worked in the industries I've worked in, I've had tons of feedback. Graduating from a doctoral program, I've had a lot of feedback. But one thing I think people need to remember when they're talking about feedback, particularly in a career setting, and when you're thinking about what it is that you want to do, you really have to embrace it as a gift, but make it your own. Their answer and their feedback is not the be all and end all. I always recommend taking in the points that are valuable to you, that are going to benefit you, and knowing that you're never going to please everybody, but taking in what's relevant, working on that, and releasing the rest. I've also learned to trust sources more than others. So I remember even having a conversation the other day with one of my friends, and we were talking about feedback. And I said to her, consider the source. And once I said that, it just, I sort of saw the light bulb go off in her head. And every time I hear someone who struggled and that's upset, and we talk through the conversation, you need to think about who it's coming from and why it's coming from that person.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's such an easy thing to say, consider the source. And, that's beautiful, because a lot of people get caught up in those things, because especially in a career situation, if it's your boss or something like that, someone you report to, need to take it seriously, and yet consider the source. What does it mean to you? So I love that. Good. So, so here we are near the end of our time together. What advice would you give to yourself as a child, like when you were 6 years old, when you're 21 years old, and then when you're older as a 35-year-old? What advice would you offer yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think if I were to look back at the 6-year-old Sabrina, I would just give myself the advice of playing kickball is not the be all and end all of popularity and security. You have to read my story to learn about that. But to this day, I still cannot and will not play kickball. But if I were a 6-year-old and could go back, I would just ingrain that into that poor little girl. When I was 21, what I would say is just, you're beautiful, you're elegant, you're amazing, and you deserve so much more than what you're giving yourself credit for. And also, you are 21 and you need to act like you're 21. It's only the beginning of your life, and don't rush it. And then finally, when I got to 35, and I will say I'm much older than 35 now, but at 35, take better care of yourself. It's a stop along the way, and whatever struggles that you're going through shall pass. The best is yet to come. So your work, your job doesn't define you.
I love that. We can all listen to that right now. Whoever's out there, 35, 45, 55, your job doesn't define you, and all of that. The kickball thing, I know people will enjoy that. So that's going to be fun for them to find out that about you. So that's been great. So Sabrina, thank you so much. Do you have any final words for our audience? Do you have one thing that you want to share that you maybe didn't get to right now?
I think that I would just say to anyone who's out there listening is that you are amazing. You've got this. You will come through whatever is happening in your life. If you need support, if you need structure, if you need something to turn to help, know that that's okay. And that's basically just my message. Give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to do that, to get to that path of greatness. Give yourself permission to enjoy that beautiful sunset, the sunrise. Give yourself permission to go get a massage. You're worth it. You give yourself permission to love yourself, I think is how I would end it.
Well, I love that. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Sabrina. I know that there are people that are listening that are going to want to stay connected with you. Can you tell us how they can do that?
Absolutely. So I am on LinkedIn, Dr. Sabrina Franconeri, or if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, it's Dr. Dr. Sab, S-A-B, Frank, F-R-A-N-C, all lowercase. Happy to connect with anyone who's out there and would love to strike up conversation, would love to collaborate, would love to just be a resource and an advocate for you.
Wonderful. Well, Sabrina, thank you so much. This was great, very eye-opening and really some wonderful, simple, wonderful advice. So thank you so much for that. And thanks for sharing your story in the book. It's really an entertaining story and a good story, really heartfelt. And I appreciate you sharing your journey with us. Thanks for being a part of this.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Sue. And thank you for having me be part of the collaboration with the women and for today's conversation. I always love having conversations like this because I feel like I learned a little bit more about myself just in talking to you.
Yes, that's how it works. Thank you so much. And listeners, thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm sure that you're learning about yourself as you're listening to these women, sharing their own stories, their own life, because we're all connected here and we're all so much more alike than we are different. So lean into your own uniqueness and recognize that and follow your heart, follow what it's telling you, follow your guidance. And be sure to buy this book, Heart Whispers, on launch day, which is June 22nd. When you go to our website, heartwhispersbook.com, you'll be guided to the Amazon link for your country, wherever you are. On that day, we have a 99-cent Kindle special. So that's really terrific. When you buy that book, bring your Amazon receipt number back to that website, heartwhispersbook.com, and you'll have access to all of these gifts, about 40 gifts from our partners and authors. They're awesome. You will love them. The gifts are worth the 99 cents 100 times, a million times over. So definitely do that. You'll appreciate that. And continue to listen to the summit. Share it with everybody that you know. And I wish you all a beautiful day, and may you enjoy a beautiful sunset or sunrise in these next few days. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.